Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken, saying there are no winners in tariff wars. ABC's Indonesia correspondent Bill Birtles has more.
He reiterated that, in his view, there are no winners in a trade or tariff war. He reiterated China's position that it is not afraid of fighting a tariff war, but it certainly seeks to avoid one. So this is the messaging that he and his state media has been putting out for quite some time now, since Donald Trump got back in. And you'd have to think that Xi Jinping and the Chinese leadership is pretty happy with what happened in Geneva yesterday. Judging from the commentaries in state media, it is full of praise about how this was a fair and balanced agreement. That's how the Chinese state broadcaster CCTV described it. The nationalistic mouthpiece, the Global Times, described this as a great example of how the US and China can work together for mutual benefit and to solve problems. This is the sort of praise that the Chinese government would heap on a deal if it is very, very happy with that deal. And analysts going into this negotiation in Geneva thought that maybe the two sides would simply agree to keep talking, but the slashing of tariffs from 145% down to 30%, even though it's supposedly temporary, that exceeded expectations. It obviously exceeded expectations in Beijing. And you've already had the US President Donald Trump saying he won't raise tariffs again to that 145% when the 90 days is up. So you can see, Roz, that Beijing thinks it's making substantial progress on this issue.
So what's been the reaction then so far to the deal and also to the comments from Mr. Xi?
Well, analysts really seem quite amazed by just how quickly the Trump administration was willing to wind those tariffs back down. You've got to remember, this all is happening because Donald Trump is hoping to force the Chinese side into making various changes to the way they do business with the US to get down China's huge huge trade surplus. Now, out of the talks in Geneva yesterday with the US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and a very senior member of the Chinese Politburo, He Lifeng, we didn't see publication of any concessions that the Chinese side will be making in exchange for that tariff climb down from 145 to 30. Perhaps they did agree to something, but we just haven't seen much in the way of any public details about what Beijing has given the Trump administration in exchange for such significant, immediate tariff relief. And judging from the commentaries in state media, China seems to be rather satisfied with the progress made thus far. So what we will be looking for, Roz, in the coming days and weeks is whether or not the Chinese side has actually agreed to give the Trump administration anything in exchange for this tariff relief. Bear in mind, Donald Trump has said he is willing to put tariffs back up after 90 days if he doesn't see progress. But so far, that's the big question. Has China actually given any concessions?
And what do other countries in the region think about what's happening?
Yeah, so other countries in general have been dismayed just by the reduction in trade between the world's two largest economies that we've seen in recent weeks since those large tariffs were imposed. Obviously, a 30% tariff on many Chinese goods will still have an impact, but it's quite likely that Chinese exporters will feel more confident to put their goods on ships and send them back to the States even with a 30% tariff. So in general, there's a feeling that as long as these two economies are trading with each other in a more normal way, then this will have a flow-on effect for demand and economic growth throughout the region. But Roz, here in Indonesia, they themselves, the government, are negotiating with the Trump administration to try and ward off the threat of a 32% tariff on Indonesian goods. In Cambodia, it's a 49% tariff. In Vietnam, it's a 46% tariff. All of these countries are dispatching their own negotiators to Washington to try and do deals to get down their trade surpluses with the US because they still have this existing threat of a large tariff to be imposed on exports from Southeast Asia if they can't strike a deal in the coming months.
Bill, thank you.